Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thanks for joining me here. We got a big one today. Super important update regarding CME futures, back-end data here, specifically with liquidation and dominance. But the most important thing, of course, is just reiterating and reaffirming these Fed rate decisions here tomorrow, as well as some big tech earnings. So these are going to be hitting pretty hard. This is, of course, slated for tomorrow for Microsoft, Meta, and Google. So important stuff to recognize, and obviously some outliers here too on the order block, some things we really want to pay attention to. So be sure to stick around. We got a good one today. All right, folks, before we jump into the back-end data, let's go ahead and quickly reaffirm the importance of always liking the videos and commenting below if you get a chance. Deeply appreciate you doing that. Thank you again so much for being a phenomenal part of my life. Don't forget to enable alerts and make sure that you are staying on top of those things. Now, just to quickly touch on the fundamentals here, the important things here are as follows. Fed rate decision tomorrow. As per usual, we're going to see 2 p.m. There's going to be basically 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to get those news, or basically the results there. And then 2:30, Powell comes up and gives a speech and just totally destroys the market. He could actually contribute positively, but as of late, hasn't been that great. And then, of course, we got the big tech earnings. We've already touched on that, but all three of those companies, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Meta, are going to provide their earnings. A lot of their earnings are probably looking pretty decent, considering they're all AI driven. The last thing, of course, probably the most important, and I was able to look this up specifically what time it is. It's the Trump Z summit here, basically, where Trump is going to speak with the president of China about tariffs, and that is essentially 8 p.m. Wednesday Eastern Standard Time, effectively Thursday morning in South Korea. So just kind of some heads up on that. We're seeing the time frame tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Fundamental catalyst at 2 p.m. for the Fed rate decision, 2:30 for the conference, and then of course I think it's 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the big tech earnings here as well. Okay, so just some time frames to be mindful of. Maybe consider staying out of the market during those times because those are all fundamental catalyst in a lot of ways, just based on the fact that it's going to push the price action of Bitcoin in different directions. Now, speaking of which, we've got some pretty large buy orders here, specifically at 116,000, so we can see that heavily guarded on the order blocks. And then once more locally, 114.5K with some larger orders here locally. So folks are trying to buy this dip here, all right? Now, it's not a significant dip, but it's a dip nonetheless. Taking a look here at the last 24 hours, we can see there's a pretty big gap between liquidation of upper and lower because the price just wicked up and wicked down really quick. Went to 116 to 114 and back up again. So it's kind of that standard manipulation. Now, there's possibilities that it's something to do with this gentleman here. Of course, James Wynn, he's causing a lot of problems usually in the market where there's liquidation hunts to try to target him. I'm not saying that's exactly the case, of course, but there's a lot of reasons why this has that this is something to do with it, right? So there's just it kind of speaks to the whole manipulative market that we're in. Anyways, let's go and jump back into liquidation. To clarify, once again, the local liquidation has been fully swept within last couple thousand to the upside and downside. But once more, 116.3K and above has a lot of liquidation. So there's a chance that we see the price continue higher based on that metric there. That's more so the macro liquidation. Okay, so that's looking good there in that regard. Let's go ahead and take a quick look here at the back-end data for Bitcoin, kind of just see where we're at. On the right-hand side is open interest. We've talked about this previously, but once more, 113.5K is that local area. We actually saw the price action wick down to that level here, and we see the price action bouncing off that range. Okay, that's exactly why we had to take profit target in that level. So if you're not familiar with this, Bitcoin, we took 22% in 12 hours because we averaged into a position, or actually we didn't average in, we just got in at 115. The 116 never got filled, and we got out at 113.7. And if you saw my video from yesterday, you'll know that that was a heavy area of confluence. There was a lot of liquidation there. There's also the open interest just below where the price bounced. Okay. Now, it's never an exact science. It doesn't always work out this way, but that's generally construed as a kind of a support level here for us so far, that 113.5K. Now, looking here at liquidation. As far as delta is concerned, it's kind of jumping up and down. And if we do kind of take a quick look here at the last 3 days liquidation, we're kind of in that middle of that range. Once more local liquidation got hit upside and downside. Let's actually look at the last 7 days, see if there's anything left here, just to get a better perspective. I know we already kind of looked at this, but this helps us kind of see where we're at. And generally speaking, there's a big chunk once more at 116.5, but based on the order block, there's a lot of sell pressure at 116. So that level of 116 is kind of somewhat of a resistance range based on a lot of protection in that environment. All right, now take a look here. Not the 4-day, sorry, it was a 4-hour. Let's look at the daily time frame first and just kind of work our way down here for Bitcoin and just recognize quite simply that we are kind of in this interesting range right now, right? Where we're testing the 50-day SMA. We're also overextended with the 9 on TD sequential, letting us know that we've been moving approximately in the same direction for 9 days straight. You could probably argue it's only been about 5 days because we had this period of consolidation, this 4-day fight or battle at 108,000. But generally speaking, we're moderately overextended and we're reaching into a resistance range, but we're over 50 on the RSI and MACD is converging. These are more positive signs than negative, right? And the concept here, once more, we zoom out, we look at our point of control, 111,000 is that range there where we have the most amount of support. So support below the price, a little bit of resistance above based on volume, but more so overextension and a continuation progression higher. Most of these things kind of combine together to give us a slightly better, more advantageous potential further upside here for us. So I'm not proposing we're going to go straight up, but I can tell you we're mostly bullish here in the overall sense because once more on the lower time frames, you can see we're still establishing higher lows and higher highs as well, right? It's a nice little channel. You could argue this is like a broadening type of wedge pattern here where the price action could break down. That's absolutely true. So we do want to pay attention to our our short-term ascending trend line, but at this point, there's not a whole heck of a lot of signs here telling us we're just going to rip right back down. The pullback that I talked about yesterday has already happened. That's essentially it. Now, does that mean you just take longs moving forward? Probably not. I think that this week is a bad week to consider trading a lot or over trading, as discussed already, right? We've talked about the fundamental catalyst coming in the next 24 hours. We're going to see a pretty different market in 2 days from now, all right? So between now and then, maybe consider, omitting your risk and lowering your risk, right? But hypothetically, the price does pull back. I would say 111 should be the immediate bottom based on that macro point of control and also the local point of control. It's also the local high here before it broke this range and hasn't been retested yet. So in most cases, you do generally see the price work its way back down to those previous high ranges before it continues further up. But you could also argue that our local high here was retested and the price is going to take off from here too. So it really depends on how you are and what your thoughts are. So what I mean by that is what kind of trader are you? Do you want to average in now as the price pulls back? Or do you want to go all in at this level? It's probably a bad idea to do so either way. I think waiting on the sidelines for that 111, 112K range may be a better consideration. Even if that ship sails, who cares? You know you made the right choice, right? That's kind of the concept. I'm not saying right now taking along is a bad idea. It's just not necessarily the most recommended, even though we're still in a nice little convergence type of situation. So the easy way to understand it is a macro structure here for Bitcoin and even the lower timeframes are indicating further upside. We just have these ridiculous fundamental catalysts happening in the next 24 to 48 hours. If they happen to be disadvantageous, then we're probably going to go down. Obviously, the inverse applies as well if they're looking good. So those are the kind of my thoughts. What are yours? Why don't you comment below? Let's take a look at some altcoins next. All right, folks, let's go and take a quick look here at Litecoin. Double check this coin first, kind of see where we're at, because Litecoin's an interesting one. It has been shooting up and shooting down pretty hard and pretty significant. So we really want to make sure to take advantage of looking at key level supports and resistances to identify if it's going to continue to progress in a different direction, right? So let's go ahead and compare this coin first, get some understanding where we're at just before looking at liquidation. Bitcoin's on the left-hand side, Litecoin's on the right. And the easy way to identify it here is that we're seeing a lot more sporadic behavior for this coin when Bitcoin is, Bitcoin's a little sporadic too, don't get me wrong, but it's a complete knee-jerk reaction here. So as we can kind of see the local high, the previous time where we tried to come, when Bitcoin actually continued to progress higher, Litecoin pulled back and didn't even initially jump up. So that leads me to believe there's a poor pairing here and this coin could continue lower because that's a very inverse benefit, if you will. In other words, we're seeing a 2x to the downside and like a 0x to the upside, or maybe even a half x, if you will. And when I say those numbers too, by the way, folks, I'm really just paraphrasing and trying to give you perspective on how strong the coins are versus Bitcoin. Because even though it's not like a guarantee, if you know how those things are, how the coins are performing at that time that you trade, you're going to be in a much better position to take safer trades because you know the general direction of that coin. As we can see on the right-hand side, open interest, there's not a whole heck of a lot of open interest outside of 100, which is a psychological support or resistance for us, 103, or 102 rather, and then 98. So 98, 100, 102. We can see liquidation short delta is now high, so that this coin has effectively flipped or shifted bearish, if you will. And we look at liquidation, there's just a lot of liquidation to the downside, very little left to the upside. So it seems like the directions or the arrows are all pointing down for this coin. Let's double check though. Now on the shorter time frames is the 4-hour time frame, by the way. We can see here with Litecoin that we're still maintaining above majority of the local moving averages, the 50 and the 20. That's okay. Our point of control here is about 96, so there's not like a ton of meat left on the bone here. So if you consider shorting, a tighter profit target would be probably advantageous. We can see a MACD divergence like most coins are exuding today, but Litecoin is much closer to its 50 and the RSI. So we could see a pivot and a bounce here, but the likelihood of further downside makes sense considering we have a second stochastic swing to the downside. Daily time frame is probably going to look very similar to a lot of other coins, I'm guessing. Let's double check. We got a MACD convergence, yes. Stochastic swing to the downside, that's a little different. And then, of course, money flow index increasing with the RSI still under 50. So while it's positive, we're still seeing a pretty significant overextension here with a 9 on TDS, with that price wicked up to 107. So I think we're more likely to have the price pull back because if you look here, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So far, 8 days that are closing below that $100 mark. Okay, so $100 is that significant SMA at 200, at 200 SMA, basically letting us know that you shall not pass. We got Gandalf right there with the staff just holding strong, right? So in this case, right now, I think we're slightly diverging here. There's more signs pointing down than up, and I think it's while this coin's highly risky to trade in general, I think you're going to be finding more success to the downside than the upside just based on how much selling pressure we're seeing here. So that's just once more how Litecoin looks at this exact moment. If you're looking for a new exchange or possibly just want to help support the channel, Bitunix has got you covered. We've been partnered with this exchange for over 2 years. It's been our fan favorite for our community, and the reason why is because they take really good care of you. They offer trading reward bonuses as well as a reduction in fees. Best exchange I would recommend at this point. Link down below for more information. All right, let's take a quick look here at Chainlink next. Chainlink actually looks a lot better than most other coins, or at least looks very similar. If you saw my other analysis for Ethereum, SUI, Solana, XRP. SUI and XRP are both looking quite bullish, but specifically SUI has a type of cup and handle pattern forming, similar to this here in a way. So let's double check. Once more, we don't take trades based on that one thing, but it is an incentivizing factor. So jumping in the back end for Chainlink, we can see the back end data is looking similar to Bitcoin in a lot of ways. It pulled back similar to Bitcoin here in this progression. And then, of course, it ripped up here as well, as did Bitcoin, but it's establishing lower highs slightly versus Bitcoin's local lower high. So I think that's not bad. That's generally a positive sign overall. Generally not necessarily something that's super terrible, right? It basically implies that if Bitcoin goes up, it's going to go up too. All that being said, if we look at open interest, you can see 17.75 is essentially that area of support there below the price. So the price pulls back for Chainlink. 17.75 seems like a practical consideration there. We take a look at liquidation delta. It's jumping up and down as with Bitcoin. So in a lot of ways, we're seeing a pretty significant imbalance here. In other words, bears and bulls, they're fighting it out. They don't know who's going to win, right? And to take a look at the liquidation too, we want to recognize that $19 is that upper range, and then $18 is that lower range. Okay, so we could go in either direction, but there is technically more liquidation above the price because we've been retesting that level multiple times. So if you haven't noticed, there's a pretty significant line on the chart there at about $19. That's that heavy resistance for this coin, but more likely than not, we're going to see that get broken here soon, depending on how Bitcoin performs. So let's double check here. Now, this is what I want to kind of highlight for you really quick here, is once more the lower time frames. I can redraw out some new fib levels for us. I can post that playout chart on our Twitter, Telegram, and Discord, but between now and then, we broke our previous descending trend. Yeah, that's all well and good. But here locally, we can see that there's a pretty significant sell wall at $19. So once more, heavy round number, makes perfect sense. We're looking at this level here at about 19. It's been retested 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 6 or 7 times. And that's a lot, okay? When we look at that and we combine that with RSI maintaining above 50, stochastic swinging up, and the MACD converging or soon to converge, we're looking at very early signs here of continuation higher. Same thing here as well with the daily time frame. It's pretty much bullish with the exception of being under 50 in the RSI. Once we cross over $19, that would be that level for us. So I'm definitely leaning more towards a long versus a short in this coin. I would probably consider taking that trade as like a little bit looser, just in case we do see a wick down to this low liquidation range of 18 to 1770, roughly, that open interest range. We could see a little pivot. Maybe that might be a good consideration to average in if the price ends up turning around. But it seems much more likely that the price is going to continue to progress higher based on just retesting these local highs here. And this once more cup and handle pattern with an ascending trend line. This pretty much has all the makings of a good type of trade. Okay, so Chainlink's looking pretty solid for the moment. I think short term continuation higher makes sense, pending Bitcoin doesn't dump on us. All right. Take a look here next at AVAX, and this coin is extremely underwhelming. So apologize to those of you who love this coin. You probably shouldn't love any coin, future reference, but the easy way to understand it is it's super struggling. It's pulling back quite hard, but we are seeing an overextended state, right? So we're at an 8 on TD sequential, telling us we're at 32 hours of continuation in the same direction. Generally speaking, you're going to see coins reverse at those levels. So this coin is probably more likely to bounce and to continue higher from here, especially with $20 being that psychological support level. Okay. Now, looking at open interest, to kind of make it like quite simple, there's just one massive area of open interest at 2070. So me personally, if I'm going to consider a long, for example, I usually like to secure profits between now and there. So that's kind of the concept. But we can see liquidation in Delta has shifted bearish, so it's not necessarily a great sign. There's tons of liquidation at 2130 and also as well at 19. Okay, so we're kind of smack dab in the middle there, right? Do we wick up to 21 or do we pop down to 19? It's hard to say specifically, but if we look at the comparative analysis on these coins, once more, AVAX is significantly underperforming, where Bitcoin was able to pivot and bounce right there at about on Monday. We see roughly a similar circumstance there where it bounced and just fizzled out, right? So our point of control here locally is at $20.30. It would be best to see us reclaim that first before considering a long, to be on the safe side, right? But generally speaking, from an overextended state, we can presume that AVAX should pivot and bounce from here. So if we look at these lower time frames, we can kind of see here. And once more, we are 32 hours without correction to the downside. And the last time we saw a 9 on TD sequential with this coin, it pulled back, right? So hypothetically, another four hours of pullback here, we hold and maintain above $20 today. That might be a good consideration for a long. We have a nice point of control here locally at 1950. So I do think that 1950 to $20 would be a decent average in for a long consideration. Keep in mind it's higher risk because you're just basically buying a bottom. But for the most part, based on the macro structure and the way things are looking here with liquidation on the upside, a heavy concentration here at 2130, I think we're in a good chance to have more propensity for the price to go higher and to bounce off its local point of control. All right, those are my thoughts on AVAX. What are yours? Comment below. Okay, ICP, where are we at here? This looks very, very similar in a lot of ways. We're seeing an overextension as well as a point of control at roughly $3, just below the price action. So once more, good support in the macro structure range. We take a look at the overall sense here. 275 is that point of control. Keep in mind, the point of control is 275 because this coin experienced a really massive candle wick down. So we're going to kind of exclude that. Let's take a look at the last 7 days and see what's looking here locally. Now this is pretty ugly. It doesn't really zoom in too well, but roughly 330 above the price is that point of control. And then we have a little bit left at $3. So we're kind of in this ridiculous range right now where the price action is kind of working itself into a channel. Take a look at ICP on the back end. It is starting to bottom out here a little bit, so we can see some heavy selling. The heavy selling led into some heavy buying here at about 320. So 320 is that tentative support based on the previous high and local lows. If we take a look at the chart itself and we kind of compare that, 320 is roughly where the price action's at now. So we are in a position right now where we could very well see the price pivot and bounce here. So based on the four-hour closures, 315 is that local bottom, that local support. So we could very well see the price continue to progress higher from here. Once more, it's difficult to say, but these are some early signs kind of letting us know that we're in decent shape. It's not something I love to trade into personally because there's just too much downside potential now that we're kind of retesting this lower range. But as long as you have proper risk management and you invalidate the trade to say at $3 or lower, you'd probably be worthwhile taking a trade or averaging in between now and then. I'm even leaning more towards that honestly at this point. But once more, for the most part, we're seeing a MACD divergence rather. Stochastic is swinging up, so similar to AVAX, we're seeing that early indication of reversal. And once more as well with the overextension of lower time frames, and you couple that with this local point of control here, we're in pretty decent shape to see the price pivot and bounce. There's a ton of support below the price. Okay, so can this go down lower? Yes. How low can it go? It could go lower, honestly. We could even break this $3 range. But the concept here is that we're maintaining this decent range. We got a lot of support below the price. So outside of the fact that there's not a ton of buy signals here from a support and resistance range situation, both on the 4-hour and the hourly time frame. We're looking at a good potential pivot and bounce or continuation higher in the 3 to 320 range. So I would say if you're insisting on trading this coin, average into your position, pending Bitcoin doesn't dump like we identified already with those fundamental catalysts tomorrow. I think that we're in pretty good shape to see a lot of altcoins continue, because altcoin market cap dominance is, we're still like 1.6 trillion. So we're in good shape here overall. And I think a coin like this, while it has propensity to pull back, we could see a catastrophic failure. Yeah, it's still a possibility. The likelihood of that is pretty low now that we've already had that. All right. Anyways, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Comment below. Thanks again so much for being an amazing part of my life. Do not forget to take advantage of this exclusive offer here through Bitunix. Link down below. Use my link to register. You'll always be eligible for future competitions. And this one does include a nice little $700 deposit bonus, 2 Ethereum and $8,000 USDT. Okay. So awesome benefits there. Be sure to check it out. Links down below for that. Have a good rest of your day. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.